The Pike County Massacre is one of American history's most horrific, evil crimes. 8 members of one family were shot execution style in 4 different locations. Residents of the town were terrified for years as rumors spread of cartel killings. However, evidence would soon point to a cold-blooded, premeditated crime carried out by someone very close to the Rhoden family. In April 2016, Bobby Jo Manley stopped by her brother-in-law Chris Rhoden's house to feed his pets, since he and his cousin Gary were heading out. Typically, Chris's wife Dana, who recently separated after 13 years of marriage, would have gone and fed the animals. But Hannah, their daughter, recently gave birth. Despite their separation, Chris and Dana had a friendly relationship and still had a strong bond. Bobby Jo assumed his sister's hands were full with caring for her daughter, Hannah's 5-day-old Kylie, so she offered to check on the animals. Bobby Jo entered her brother-in-law's house and was greeted by an awful sight. She called 911 at 7:53 a.m. and described the bloody scene she had found at her brother-in-law's house. Both men had been shot execution style. The dispatcher told Bobby Jo to leave and not touch anything. Having decided that she should walk over to Frankie's house and tell him what had happened to his father, Bobby Jo rushed to Frankie's adjacent trailer and banged on the door. Frankie's 3-year-old son came to the door covered in blood. Bobby Jo picked up the little boy and headed toward Frankie and his fiance's bedroom. Frankie and his fiancée, Hannah Gilley, lay dead in their bed. They too had been shot in the head. Their 6-month-old son was alive but lying between his dead parents. Now in hysterics, Bobby Jo called her brother, James Manley, to check on Dana, Hannah, and Dana's youngest son, little Chris. James headed over to Dana's home to make sure everything was okay. James found Dana shot to death in her bedroom when he got to her house. He headed to his niece Hannah's room and found her dead. She was lying in bed with her 5-day-old daughter with her. James went to check on the infant. Thankfully, she was still alive. Despite searching the entire house, Chris Jr. could not be found. Dispatchers received another call within an hour of Bobby Jo's 911 call. The news about the Rhoden family murders prompted Donald Stone to check on his cousin Kenneth Rhoden. Kenneth and Chris Rhoden were brothers. David Stone was concerned when he hadn't heard from Kenneth all day despite several members of their family being murdered. When Donald got to the house, he found Kenneth dead. A gunshot killed him. Immediately upon arrival, police officers discovered Kenneth's body. He was the 7th member of the Rhoden family to die that day. After being reported missing, Chris Jr. was found inside his mother's house with apparent gunshot wounds to the head when he was found dead. With the death of Chris Jr., the number of deceased had risen to 8. At 16, he was the youngest victim, and investigators were still unsure why the killers killed him while leaving the other children alive. It was a terrifying time for the residents of Piketon. Investigations failed to produce any clues, motives, or suspects. Throughout Pike County, the Rhoden family was widely known and loved. Their heinous murders shocked the small town. Several of their friends and neighbors described them as being the funniest people they had ever met. A loved one even called the family extraordinary. Chris Rhoden was the 2nd-generation Rhoden, born in Pike County. In 1994, he married the girl he fell in love with in high school, Dana Manley. Many people have described Chris as the type of person who could be called Dad by anyone, in addition to working construction jobs at Big Bear Lake Resort. He also purchased cars at auctions during the off-season to fix and resell for profit. Dana was a hard-working nurse who always supported her family. She was a remarkable nurse because she made anyone feel comfortable. The couple had 3 children, and Frankie, who was 20 at the time, was the oldest. Frankie Rhoden was very handsome and loved by the ladies. However, Frankie loved cars. Frankie was hard-working but enjoyed fishing, hunting, and participating in demolition derbies when he was not at work. Frankie was due to marry his fiancée Hannah soon. Their son was 6 months old, and Frankie had a toddler from a previous relationship. The pair were eager to get married and begin their life as a blended family as soon as possible. Dana and Chris's youngest son, known as Little Chris to the rest of the family and friends, was quite a character and didn't care what people thought about him. As one of the first of his friends to get his driver's license, Chris Jr. was able to drive them to school and back to the mall. Chris and Donna had only one daughter, Hannah, and their 19-year-old daughter was beautiful, inside and out. Hannah was the mother of 2 young children. Luckily, her oldest daughter, 2-year-old Sophia, wasn't with her the night she was murdered. Sophia had spent the night with her biological father, Jake Wagner. As weeks passed without any arrests, Piketon residents wondered if the police would ever make any arrest. Police only told residents to lock their doors and windows, but kept quiet about everything else. Rumors spread through the small town. It was speculated that the crimes were a murder-suicide, but an autopsy revealed that many victims had been shot multiple times. There was another theory that Chris had been in a road rage fight a few days before the murders, and people thought the other person had come back for revenge. In addition, people had heard that little Chris was getting into fights online. Every tip was investigated, but nothing came from any of them. Some Pike County residents thought a local cockfighting ring might have been involved. In addition, investigators believed the demolition derbies Frankie and little Chris liked to participate in might be connected to the murders. During the course of their investigation, investigators learned that the boys had some problems with some of their past competitors. Despite investigating this theory, investigators didn't stay with it for too long, as why would anyone want to kill 8 people over a demolition derby? Investigators thought one theory was most likely to be accurate. Multiple shooters took part in the act. The number of crime scenes and victims was just too high for the crimes to have been committed by one person, or even 2 people. It appeared to be a cold-blooded and organized crime. It took a cold-blooded group to wipe out 2 generations of one family. While investigating the crime scene, investigators discovered 200 marijuana plants. It was estimated that the plants were worth $500,000. Until recently, no one knew that the Rhoden family was sitting on so much marijuana, worth so much money. There was no indication that the family, who lived modestly and drove an affordable car, were involved in a large-scale drug operation. Initially, there were suspicions this was a cartel murder. Although everything pointed to a cartel-related murder, the children's survival told investigators the cartel wasn't involved. If the cartel wiped out 8 members of the Rhoden family, they wouldn't have cared about the 3 children. They would have taken them out too. Investigators felt the killers knew the Rhoden family and their property. There was no indication that Dana's 2 protective dogs attempted to attack anyone during the shootings, and no forced entry was made into any of the homes. In May 2017, investigators and law enforcement agents, armed with search warrants, searched the farmland recently sold by George, Bill, and Angela Wagner. Hannah Rhoden's 2-year-old daughter's father, Jake Wagner, was also her child. After the murders, the Wagner family moved to Alaska. According to their lawyer, the move was planned for some time to escape media coverage and harassment from the police. The Wagner family eventually returned to Pike County. Almost 2 years after 8 Rhoden family members were killed in their homes, 6 members of the Wagner family were arrested in connection with the murders. George Billy Wagner III, 47, and Angela Wagner, 48, were taken into custody. During a traffic stop, their 2 sons, 27-year-old George Wagner IV and 26-year-old Edward Jake Wagner, were taken into custody. Investigators did not want them to warn each other or skip town, so they were all arrested within minutes of each other. The family matriarch, 76-year-old Frederica Wagner, was also taken into custody by authorities. Rita Jo Newcomb, 65, Angela's mother, was also arrested on obstruction of justice charges. Billy, Angela, George, and Jake were charged with 8 counts of aggravated murder, and Frederica was charged with obstruction of justice and perjury. However, the charges were later dropped. Residents in the community had nothing but kind things to say about the Wagner family. Residents of Piketon praised Frederica as a religious woman who managed a nursing home and did a great deal of community service. There was, however, another side to the family. The family had a reputation for being very secretive and quiet. According to investigators, all 4 people arrested for the murder pulled the trigger, and Angela Wagner was the mastermind behind everything. Hannah Rhoden and Jake Wagner met in the summer of 2010. Hannah gave birth to their daughter Sophia, as the couple had been waiting to start a family. A hands-on father, Jake, was always available for his daughter. Everyone on the Rhoden and Wagner sides of the family adored baby Sophia. In early 2015, Jake and Hannah Mae had set their wedding date and had their wedding rings tattooed on their fingers. When Jake asked Hannah to be a stay-at-home wife, Hannah wasn't ready for that lifestyle, so they broke up. After their breakup, Hannah discovered she was pregnant again, and Jake may have been the father. Jake promised to take care of Hannah, even if the child was not his. Besides checking on Hannah Mae constantly, he also bought baby items for her. With the pregnancy finally coming to an end, Jake hoped that he and Hannah would be able to be together again with their 2 daughters. Angela Wagner even bought Hannah's unborn baby a crib, sharing her son's enthusiasm. The relationship between Jake and Hannah grew tumultuous as her pregnancy progressed. Allegedly, Hannah's relationship with Jake soured because Hannah did not let his family see Sophia. Jake tried to get Hannah to let his family spend some time with Sophia, but she refused. A couple of times, Jake commented about killing Hannah out of fury. Hannah even heard him say this to her face several times. Many attributed Jake's anger to the threats, and nobody took him seriously. Nevertheless, some wondered whether Jake kept his promise after the murders. What do you think about the murders of the Rhoden family? Was it Angela and Jake Wagner at Hannah Rhoden's for not allowing them access to Sophia that caused them to shoot 8 people? Don't forget to hit the bell icon and subscribe.